Hello and welcome to Szczecin, Poland on this beautiful Sunday. We gather here to play the RPTQ or the MCQ, the qualifier for the Mythic Championship that will take place in a couple of months in London. We have 57 players. We will play 6 rounds of standard, followed by a single elimination round in top 8. And the top 4 players from this tournament will earn their invitation to the Mythic Championship in London. My name is Piotr Bomak. I am joined here by
Piotr Głogowski, also known as Canister.
Alright, and we will bring you all the rounds of Swiss, the coverage from the top 8, and some interviews with the players, with the winners. So we hope that you'll have a lot of fun with us today. Yesterday it was pretty interesting. We had lots of control. We had lots of Sultai decks, a couple of combo decks. Not much aggro though.
Yeah, there was. Yesterday was mostly Esper decks on in the feature match area.
So we hope that today we will have more diversity. Although the top 8 itself was was very diverse. We had Drake's deck, we had the mono blue deck, we had of course the rogue Mardu Knights.
Yeah, the Mardu Knights deck.
That was very interesting, playing a myriad of hard to deal with 2-drops. And this first round, we do not know what to expect just yet.
The players are getting ready, and we will be starting just in a minute.
How did your story of Pro Tour start? Did you win an RPTQ or did you get the invitation through a GP?
I top 8 at the Grand Prix. It was a Grand Prix in Milan in 2015. I top 8 with Amulet. Went to Brussels for my first PT, Dragons of Tarkin. It was pretty fun.
Of course it was. Alright, that was the times of the broken Amulet Titan with Summer Bloom, right?
Yeah.
Alright, welcome to round 1.
Beautiful deck.
You have 50 minutes, you may begin.
It was much better than this is now. Although some people still very stubbornly and relentlessly keep just playing matches with it, and some of them even win, so I do find that respectable.
Okay, so the first round we are going to see Kamil Pyka and Pete Gereke. I know Pete from a couple of tournaments that we played in Germany, and he is a very solid player, and I bet he's very well prepared for this tournament. I wonder what he brought to the table, and we got the deck list. That's beautiful.
So Kamil, on the left side of the screen, is going to be piloting a pretty mostly stock deck list of Izzet Drakes. That's the archetype of choice for him.
And on the other hand, on the other side of the table, we will have the Sultai mid-range deck. Also, nothing too extraordinary in the main deck. One copy of Hostage Taker. That's.
I do see Thought Erasures in
yeah, there are
Piet's,
some
deck lists, so that's something that's starting to picking up some pace lately, and more people play that. It certainly puts more strain on your mana, but makes your mid-range Sultai deck even more able to do with basically anything that you could possibly imagine. So
perhaps that's a little bit of an inspiration from the winner of yesterday's MKM trial. That was Jiří Obraz, and he won with a more blue-heavy Sultai mid-range deck, featuring exactly Thought Erasures, as you said, and Thieves of Sanity main deck.
Kamil was happy with his 7, Piet mulligans to 6 on the play, plays a land and passes. So Blue-Red Drakes versus Sultai, or back then it was just Green-Black. It's kind of a classic matchup, and was kind of a classic matchup in the last standard format. It did vary a lot mostly because the Drake's deck just changed a bunch throughout its lifespan. Nowadays the deck is not playing cards like Arclight Phoenix anymore, so you know the general texture of the matchup is different than it used to be at first. So we will see how it unravels.
So a charge, of course, the follow-up play for Camille. We will see what he decides to discard. A land, steam vents, and we will go back to Pete.
Pretty slow start for Pete.
Indeed, no Wildgrowth Walkers, no Jade Light Rangers.
Yeah, just playing his lands and passing the turn.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly from Camille. Camille was sitting on a Spell Pierce. Spell Pierce does not have too many uses against Pete's decks, though. It's great at preventing Vivian Read from happening early in the game, just on turn 5. But other than that, there's a limited amount of non-creature spells in the Sultai midrange deck.
And the first play for Pete this time is a singular copy of Hydroid Crisis. That managed to draw him a card, gave him 1 life. That's like the baseline of
yeah,
the
nice
Crisis.
2-for-1, dealing with the you know, taking care, like making Camille spend a shock and drawing a card in the process.
Exactly.
And helping Piet draw more lands and then try to leverage his powerful hand of Carnage Tyrant and find finality.
Yes, Carnage Tyrant, a card that's not impossible, but slightly harder to deal with for the blue-red Drake's deck.
Now that I take a closer look at Pete's deck list, he's just skipping
The Walkers.
yeah, Wildgrowth Walkers entirely.
He is.
Less and less players lately seem to be interested in that, given the fact that the aggressive decks do tend to be on the back foot.
Yes, there is not so much need to cushion your life total so much, since you are not under considerable amount of pressure most of the time.
Yeah, you could say that in a way they actually got pushed out by, you know, the prevalence of cards like Wildgrowth Walker and Absorb in the mid game, but it'll be interesting to see if it circles back during the PT, or maybe not.
I guess we will see. Lava Coil taking down the Ravenous Chupacabra. That will not be able to be brought back by Find Finality. No
Yeah,
copies of
it's not-
Memorial
not
to
the
Folly, I think.
Not the insane. Yeah, you probably cannot play Memorial if you are splashing blue
Yeah.
so heavily. But you know, lava coiling the Chupacabra, not the most exciting thing that has ever happened for Camille, I would say, but he felt like he needed that extra point of damage that he gets from that exchange, seemingly.
Alright, and Hostage Taker, a follow-up play.
And that's a pretty huge dive down test, and Camille fails it, does not have a dive down. Pete just plays his 7th land and
Now has a 0/4 flying blocker.
well, the bigger part of that exchange is that Camille no longer has a
Attacker,
flying beater.
of
So
course.
that actually just probably puts Camille in a mostly unwinnable spot.
Crackling Drake might...
Yeah, he needs to draw a threat, stick it, and then do something crazy. There are no copies of cards like Maximize Velocity for Camille to assemble a surprise kill next turn. So it's looking pretty grim. Notably though, you typically think of Carnage Tyrant as this unkillable threat that just never dies, and it is not necessarily the case in this exact matchup because Camille has access to Discovery Dispersal, and he has access to one black Shockland, one Watery Grave in his entire deck, which he drawn early in the game and played, so that is an out to Carnage Tyrant if he wants to survive.
Let's remind the viewers at home that Discovery Dispersal, the second half Dispersal, is an instant that costs 3 blue and black. Target player returns the highest converter mana cost permanent they own to their hand and then discard a card. So in this case it would be a Carnage Tyrant.
I believe it might even be each opponent,
Each opponent, okay.
but the relevance of that differentiation is not huge.
At least not in standard.
I guess it is. It matters against Shalai.
It, yeah, it walks around the hexproof clause.
And the thing is that even if Camille would have a Discovery Dispersal, which I think is actually present in his hand, still cannot really attack because then he would die to the creatures on the battlefield. The thing is that right now Piet has 5 points of power, but he has a fine finality. He can just cast it to bring back the crashes or nothing really, and you know, attack with his newly found 6 points of power. Also, you also see that Piet has a Assassin's Trophy, so Camille is in a really tough spot. Piet is patiently waiting on that and just not using it, which is a good move on his part.
So Discovery will be the play.
Dive down is interesting, but you cannot draw both of those cards, I believe. I believe Camille made his land drop this turn already. If he did not, then he has access to a Shockland. A Shockland dive down combination would allow him to protect the Drake from a Assassin's Trophy, but again, those lines just allow him to survive. It's
not playing to win, it's playing to
it's
not to lose.
pretty hard for him to actually turn the corner and then win. He would need to assemble something crazy, chain a bunch of cantrips. Right now, as of now, the power of the Drake is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So also not spectacular.
Notably, he also just cast the Discovery. That means that he no longer has access to Dispersal. So he goes for a more controlish route, and will try to trade with the Carnage Tyrant. That's potentially a way for him to win, but that's not really beating fine finality on creatures.
Yeah, Beacon Bolt taking down the Merfolk Branchwalker actually pumps up the Carnage Tyrant, sorry, the Crackling Drake to 6 power. Now it is able to
We'll see
take it down.
Pete end of turn casting the Assassin's Trophy, probably getting dive down, because otherwise you die on the board. Yep, Camille chooses to dive down his monster. Pete untaps. Draws a cast down.
That was revealed to
Oh yeah,
Branchwalker earlier.
okay, so we knew that he had a cast down on the top of the deck, which means that, well, Camille's in a pretty tough position. So the Drake has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points of power right now, which is a lot, but not much. Not many bad things can happen if you just try to cast it down. A dive down will make it so that you trade your
Carnage Tyrant.
Tyrant for the Drake.
Spell Pierce you just pay for.
Spell Pierce you just pay for, that's exactly. So if you, even if Camille has a dive down against your cast down, then you get to attack for 4 points, and then you can cast Fine Finality, get back 2 creatures, including the Merfolk Branchwalker, replay the Branchwalker, and have a Carnage Tyrant or a Hydroid Crisis in hand.
I think we're going to see the cast down play.
Yeah, well, let's see what play Pete thinks is the best one. He indeed cast downs the monster and Camille immediately scoops.
So the power of Carnage Tyrant and some flexible spells allowed Pete to take down blue-red Drakes in the first game.
Yeah.
Admittedly, it was a pretty slow start for both players.
Carnage Tyrant is a bummer for the blue deck. To some extent, you can of course fly over it or just race it or make it irrelevant in any other way. But if the Sultai deck makes the game go long, and it's easier for the Sultai deck to make the game go long, especially with Fodder Rager now, because you can just heavy target the threats or take your opponent's dive down and make them unable to protect the creature. So you know that will naturally make the game go longer, and then you have to deal with Carnage Tyrant. Discovery Dispersal is an answer. It is far from an ideal one, unless you already are racing with your opponent and have a Drake on the battlefield, pounding your opponent every time you spend 5 mana to bounce it back.
Okay, let's take a look at the sideboards that the players are consulting right now. So for the Sultai side, we have an Assassin's Trophy, a Hostage Taker, 3 Thieves of Sanity, 3 Negates, 1 Unmoored Ego. That's interesting. 1 Cry of the Carnarium, 2 Moment of Craving, Plague Crafter, and 2 copies of Duress.
Yeah, it's been pretty typical for those Sultai mid-range decks to just adapt to, you know, just go the route of boarding in every single spell that can deal with a Drake that you have, back it up with Duress, and you know, play some monsters on the meanwhile. And I have not proven, you know, the Drake's deck has not proven to me yet that it can reasonably beat that. So I would definitely bet on Pete in this matchup. Camille can take some approaches on his own. Notably, there is a card that is missing from his side, but he's missing the powerful Nif Mizet Parun, not choosing to play that card. Instead, he has 4 copies of Legion Warboss. Those cards are pretty good against control in some spots, so that's probably where he wants to use those. Not expecting them to see Legion Warboss in the Sultai matchup. The cards that he can use in the Sultai matchup are 1 Entrenching Melody, 1 Beacon Bolt, 2 Aral is the Viceroy, and maybe 2 copies of Disdainful Stroke. That's what I would expect. Maybe the Shivan Fire too, but I'm not entirely sure what strategy will Camille choose to go with for this matchup, but honestly, I do not love Camille's position deck-wise.
Well, we will just have to see. I mean, he's going to be on the play, so...
Okay, we also just heard that Pete actually, in his sideboarding process, took out all copies of Vivian Raid from his deck, being, you know, a lot of respect to Spell Pierce and Dive Down. Vivian is a really powerful planeswalker if you can manage to play her and successfully -3 on a Drake, and then have this leftover powerful planeswalker that draws you cards. But it is a pretty huge blowout if every time you walk into a Spell Pierce and every time you walk into a Dive Down. So certainly not a thing that every single player would do, but again, like, showing respect to Spell Pierce and Dive Down, like, also that kind of points towards Pete being confident about
his position in the matchup, his sideboard
like,
plan.
yeah,
He knows
like
what he's doing.
Probably being confident in him winning the late game anyways, and just not trying to avoid not giving Camille windows to get blown out by those 1 mana interaction spells. Now Pete has a powerful start of the Llanowar Elves, turn 1.
You're never happy to sit opposite of that. It's not a disaster, but
especially leading on an island. Islands do not cast shocks, typically.
Not necessarily.
Yes, Camille will take some time. No, it actually makes sense. Like, you spend so much time cantripping in the Drake's deck, you almost assuredly will have the pieces that you want if enough time passes. But at the same time, you spend a lot of time cantripping, so you are pretty much looking for opportunities to gain back the time that you lost by not developing your own plan. So, interesting approach.
The extra mana boost not utilized by Piet. He just attacks with his Llanowar Elves, follows up with a tapped Breeding Pool, indicating no 3 mana plays for now.
So this full of 4 drops. Camille picks up on that and just destroys the mana dork, which is a play that makes a lot of sense.
It does.
I think I see Negate in Pete's hand. So he has more respect for Negate than I do in that matchup, certainly.
The first Terramander of the game.
Notably, he also chose not to protect his Llanowar Elf with the Negate, so like not valuing 2 life points or valuing Camille's 1 life point more than he valued. Well, I guess he would need to play the Breeding Pool on tap, so he would need to pay 2 anyways. Probably would not end up negating the Beacon Bolt, but I could see it in a mana hungry hand. Not entirely out of the question.
The Salamander Drake gets in for 1 point of damage, passing the turn. Hydroid Grace the pickup.
Yeah, we have seen Pete test the waters essentially with a Ravenous Chupacabra last turn. He might just try to stick a Hostage Taker this turn. That would run into the extra copy of Disdainful Stroke that Camille has ready. And then actually it gives a pretty nice window for Camille to
resolve
Ral Izzet Viceroy if he draws his 5th land, which he hasn't done yet. Okay, there it is, the 5th land.
And now the Drake is a 5/5, so the pressure is mounting up.
Yeah, the pressure is on Pete. Okay, Camille is deciding whether it's worth it to just jam Ral. Decides it is because, well, then he has 2 threats on the battlefield and he has to draw a good card. He has to choose between a Pteramander and a Pteramander. Still makes it look as if a tough decision had to be made, so respect for those insane bluffing skills.
The small edges man.
Yeah, Pete drawn a cast down, right? So that means, or the Assassin's Trophy, so one of those that is was his draw for turn. So he gets to double spell this turn and he gets to clear the board and get back to parity. Camille will stick another Pteramander and adapt it for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just 2 mana, so not too much of a cost, but he's slowly running out of gas and Pete still has more action, plus the Hydroid Crushes that is going to become strong once Pete hits his 6th mana source. A dive down for Camille, so now the 5/5 is protected, maybe he can go. Maybe he can get somewhere of it. Yeah, imagine Vivian Reed in this spot. She would not be too great.
Not really, no. So perhaps this is like play draw difference in his plan.
Yes, yes. Possibly. Possibly. Since Pete knew that he will be on the draw this game.
Mm-hmm.
When you're on the play, like turn 5, Vivian kinda curves nicely into your opponent's turn 4 crackling Drake turn
Mm-hmm.
if they just like play it on curve, so at least you are not allowing them to do it comfortably.
Enigma Drake now joining the battlefield. It's a 6-powered creature. So if nothing happens, Pete is dead on board.
Yeah, he is actually dead to the combination of cards that Camille has. Dive Down plus Spell Pierce is going to take care of Pete's combination of cards, and no, this is partially why I do not love Negate, especially in comparison to discard spells. The Drake's decks, they cast a lot of spells, but not many of those are expensive, and not many of those are all that meaningful in the end. It's like more about the volume than...
Okay, and as the players prepare their sideboards and their decks for game 3, we will remind you that all this is possible thanks to our sponsors, so mtgspot.pl, Ultimate Guard, Card Market EU, Runtime GG, Exor Studios, Świat Kawy I Herbaty, and psychotalk.pl. So it would be great if you guys checked out their fan pages, showed them some love, because they did show it to us.
You can see that Camille at least is adjusting his deck for game 3, the game where he will be on the draw, so indeed maybe some play draw differences there. Deciding to cut a discarded dispersal in a entrancing melody, not good enough for him on the draw, it seems. Replacing those with a Shivan Fire and a copy of card that I could not catch. No, that is reasonable. Entrancing Melody is an expensive card. Shivan Fire is a cheap one. It's a Shivan Fire and a Shock, so just making his deck cheaper and more able to handle turn 1 land or else probably.
That might be the consideration here. There is still a lot of time. The games were not running very long, so these players can safely make their decisions. This is all pretty important because it's a tournament that allows you to make it to the Pro Tour, which is a dream for many of the players gathered here, or the Mythic Championship. And you never want to start your tournament with a loss.
I mean, both players are just probably trying to play their best. Yeah, but for the most part I would say that it is the Izzet Drakes that is the aggressor in that matchup. Like, Camille is definitely the person that needs to put some pressure on Pete and then finish the game. Albeit he can do it kinda quickly. As you have seen, he just needs like 3 hits with his Terramanders and Enigma Drakes to end up winning the game. And Pete again leads with a turn 1 Llanowar Elves, this time on the play. It's an extremely potent Tart, curving into a turn 2 J-Light Ranger. And then some more game actions.
Let's see what the Jade Light Ranger explores into. Llanowar
Is
Elf
hand 3 more lands and a Hydrate crosses?
might be.
Yes, it is
Yep.
3 more lands and a Hydrate crosses. So, interestingly, he decided to put the Llanowar Elves on top and only then drop it to make the most out of the Jade Light Ranger to have the quickest clock available. Interested to see whether he wants to fire off the crosses on turn 4 or just wait on it for a little bit more. As I could see both lines being potent. Expecting him to fire it off if he went with this, but
Well, we will see what he draws then. Guess we'll have more information to make the decision. But
well,
still,
he can also top like a powerful 4-drop, although most of the 4-drops are removal spells, so it's not really going to happen this way. I think he has drawn a
Jade Light.
Jade Light Ranger, so that's a perfect card to play right now.
Yeah, just jam Jade Light, get in for 5.
See Branch Walker, which I probably would not be interested in, but could see keeping. Yeah, Pete is not interested in it. Does the same trick, just interested in growing his Jade Light Rangers the most, so they dodge shocks. That's a pretty heads-up play by him. Respects shock with that play and just wants to kill Camille and pressure Camille the quickest that he
And the
can.
pressure was too great, and he forced a Beacon Bolt with that play, so
Yeah, and just draws an extra Jade Light Ranger, so probably plays another one, planning to play crosses with X4 next turn. Or maybe just deploying the Carnity next turn. So this slightly mana-heavy hand has worked out very well for Pete. Camille is under insane amounts of pressure, and there's a Carnage Tyrant coming the next turn unless the Llanowar Elf is dealt with. So both Jade Lights can safely attack through Drakes. That's also a reason to make them 4 power, because 3/2 Jade Light Rangers can be barely useless if there is a Drake on the battlefield. For free, they can just attack with impunity and force Camille to have more reaction spells to that. So I do like this play overall by Pete, even though I would be tempted to just ditch that Llanowar Elf immediately to dig deeper into my deck, but that runs a risk of revealing a land and making my Jade Light less suited for combat.
a dive down.
Yeah, dive down was a combat trick used to destroy one of the Jade Light Rangers, but still just going to play Carnage Tyrant for 6 mana, 7 power creature. Good, good.
Crackling Drake the draw.
Not everybody was playing Carnage Tyrant in their decks lately, but there is still some value to this card, and it is very hard to kill in some spots. It can dominate the mirror at times. You can combine it with Finality, the Finality part of it. So
The +2.
some people still choose to run it, and Pete was one of those, especially since his decklist is seemingly more late game oriented, with the Fort Erasures and no Wagner Fokers. Just 4 Hydrate Crosses, 2 Carnage Tyrant as the late game.
So now Camille in a very tough spot. It's basically a
Well,
rerun of
Carnage-
game.
Yeah.
A rerun of game 1.
Yep. Carnage Tyrant can trade for a Drake, so like that's what you can do, but not right now, since it only has the Drake only has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points of power. It needs the 6 point of power, which it's pretty hard for it to achieve. I believe there is a Spell Pierce in Camille's hand, and I don't see the rest of the cards, but Camille really hopes for. Oh wow. Pete drew a Fort Erasure, so now Camille really hopes for Pete to play his Fort Erasure just so the Drake could achieve the 6 point of power. And otherwise, Otherwise, Pete just attacks with a Carnage Tyrant that's 7/6, and you know the Drake cannot really block it, so you have to champ block with it, and that's
Suboptimal.
suboptimal indeed. It's a great way to describe that play.
Interestingly, does not attack, respecting the dive down possibility.
Well, seeing that he has drawn
Cast
two
down.
cast downs
Yeah.
and a Paprykarz, he just thinks that it is beneficial for him to wait until the next turn,
And just
Which-
safely go for it.
which beats dive down. Otherwise, you trade for a dive down, or well, and basically an opt. You will trade for the opt too, which Camille had, and then Camille has an opportunity to maybe lava call the crashes, and you are left with basically no threats, and you might be in a slightly tougher spot. So again, like some nice patience on Pete's side.
Seems like we will see a crackling Drake. Indeed, that's at play.
Yeah, so 2 6-power Drakes in the battlefield. Still cannot attack because needs to block. Pete probably will lead with a Paprykarz to see what's going on. You know, once you know what's in the Drake's deck's hand, it's going to be much easier to play for Pete. Because well, now he knows stuff, and he's no longer paralyzed by just the mere opportunity of dive down being a card that Camille could possibly have. So it's not going to cleanly deal with both Drakes this turn. I guess he will.
He will, yeah.
I guess he will. There's a shock, Thermander, Aral, Spell Pierce. There's a line for Pete to just remove the Spell Pierce and cast down both Drakes.
Just reveals his hand, shows the 2 cast downs. Oh, make him do it.
Yep. That deals with both Drakes and attacks Camille with a Carnage Tyrant for lethal damages.
Clean swoop. All right, so Paprykarz is the winner of this round. We will definitely have a chat with him once he de-sideboards, once he gets a little composed after this match. So we will be able to ask him a lot of questions about his choices, about his plays, but good display of patience, skill, and knowing the matchup inside and out. So pretty good match overall, and notably no Teferis. So
Yeah, not the first today. I do like, you know, the strategy of boarding out Vivian Reed is, it's neat. Since you just try not to let yourself open to some wonky ways to lose the game. You also make the deck less powerful, but it's already powerful enough to win the game. So, you know, you don't need to overpower your opponent by miles. You just need to overpower your opponent a little bit, enough to win the game. And well, that was decent.
So that was round 1 out of 6 total rounds of Swiss, of course. These will be followed by a single elimination round in top 8 and the
Decide
top 4 players.
who qualifies for the Mythic Championship in London.
Indeed, the second Mythic Championship, or third?
Second.
Second.
Cleveland is the first actual Mythic Championship.
All right.
To happen.
Okay, so we will bring you the winner's interview in just a short second, so stay tuned.